Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dozer, and if you're new to the show, the mission here is to expose the quacks and gimmicks in the marketing industry while featuring some great marketers and entrepreneurs along the way. On this episode, I'm excited to welcome my guest, Jon Gillham. Jon is the founder and CEO of Originality.ai, which is a popular tool designed to detect AI-generated content. And Jon also has over a decade of experience in SEO and content marketing. So, Jon, thank you so much for hopping on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those who haven't heard of you or Originality.ai, just do a quick background on who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, sounds good. So my background was in the world of web publishing, building websites, built up a content marketing agency, had sold it. At one point, that agency was the heaviest user of Jasper, which was an AI writing tool predating
Jarvis AI.
Yeah. And then had seen the sort of wave of generative AI coming, knew that we wanted to build up a complete content quality QA, QC tool, quality assurance control tool. And we built it, built an AI detection plagiarism checker combined, and launched on Friday. And ChatGPT launched on the Monday right after, and it's been a ride since then.
Obviously, the goalposts keep shifting when it comes to detecting AI content. So, just in the previous, I would say, year or so, how has the AI generated content landscape just kind of changed over the past year? Would you say, just from the shift from what do we see, GPT-3 to 3.5 to 4? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of the intelligence has been scaling, but the sort of writing creativity and the ability for the writing to be detected has been plateauing, which is easier for us and a little bit surprising. What we thought we would see was like the leap from GPT-2, which was useless, to GPT-3, which kind of became a little bit useful, to then 3.5, which was like quite useful, and 4, which was a way better writer than I am. And then kept going. Models kept coming out after that, but the sort of detectability of these models has not. And all at the time it was just OpenAI's and sort of models, and then they're like 2, 3, 3.5, 4, and now there's dozens, and the detectability across them has not scaled at the rate that the intelligence has scaled, or the inability to detect has not scaled at the rate that the models have scaled, or the intelligence of the models has scaled. So that's been it's always entertaining, new models coming out, and we have to test and update our model, but it's been easier than expected.
So obviously don't give away your secret sauce here, but what are just a few high level things of how are you guys detecting and whether determining if something's AI generated or not? What are just some quick tactical things there?
Yeah, so it's actually an unsettling answer where we don't know. And it's kind of the same way that if you were to ask OpenAI, why did ChatGPT write an answer like this? And it's like, well, AI is a black box. It was our own AI that we've trained. We fed it millions of records of human text, millions of records of AI text, and it's learned to tell the difference between the two. Humans think they're really good at identifying patterns. Giant industries like gambling are built off people thinking they can pick out patterns. But AI is actually quite good at identifying patterns, and that's how our detector works at sort of the highest level.
What would you say, in your opinion, between the models is the hardest to detect? Is it Anthropic's? Is it OpenAI's, Mistral, Grok? Talk about that.
Yeah, it's any one that has the least presence in our training data set, and then our training data set is built off of the popularity of the models. And so OpenAI, Anthropic are the most easy for our detector to check because they're the most popular, and Gemini as well, Llama a bit. And so it's kind of the fringe like ones are a little less easy to detect, but they're all it's all kind of built off the same data sets, like the web data set, same hardware, same transformer technology, and then just the guardrails are different. And so there's not a huge gap from the easiest to detect to the hardest to detect, but that gap is usually driven just by how much of that model's content is in our training data set.
Yeah, and so as time goes on, right, I just want your honest opinion about Originality.ai as time goes on with AI content and it keeps improving. I guess what is your selling point in the long run? Do you think at some point people are just going to keep looking at this and say, I don't care if it's AI content detected versus a human wrote it? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think society is going to have to wrestle with that question. I think there's going to be pockets of the world that become more open to AI content existing, and I think there's pockets of the world that are going to become really, really resistant to it. And I think that's something where it's going to continue to get more nuanced. Whereas right now it's a pretty kind of binary approach where some people are saying no AI content, some people are saying all the AI content. I don't care how it's generated. I think that's going to become more nuanced over time. I think if you were to see a score summary from a basketball game, see your shirt. If you see a sort of an AI summary of a game, that's probably pretty great. That's an efficient way of seeing it. If you have a baby and you're buying a product for them and you're reading a review and you find out that that was purely AI generated without a human in the loop, not very happy about that. And so I think it's going to be nuanced on where it gets accepted and not accepted.
I'll give you my quick take on this. I think the average person actually can't tell if something's AI generated or not. And I
Yeah.
think we're going to have what's called the AI inflection point, where the average person, when they read something, hear something, see something, they're going to ask themselves at some point in time, maybe 5, 10 years from now, was that AI? And at least for me, once you get the hint that something's AI, credibility and trust goes out the window because now you're viewing something from a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's very true. I think everyone wants to write with AI. No one wants to read AI.
Or listen to it or see it or
Yeah.
etc. So let's talk about some of the challenges, I guess, from an SEO or Google search results perspective that Google has of balancing AI content detection, I guess, in its role as also a major AI developer with their Gemini models.
Yeah, it's a fascinating situation that they find themselves in. They're sort of facing this Kodak moment as a corporation where the technology that they've invented is also the technology that is the most likely to disrupt them in their sort of 20 year in the last 20 years. And so they have to sort of thread this needle of being this AI forward company, as you say, with their Gemini models. While also, if their search results are filled with nothing but AI content, do you want to go to the search results to find your information and click through, past some ads and then click on a link, or do you want to just go to the AI model that already created all the content that you're about to see? So I think they're faced with this really tricky situation where they need to, like, the public facing, PR facing side of the corporation is like, yeah, we're pro AI, we don't hate AI, but then they're sort of like actual actions that they're doing in the SERPs are very aggressively anti um, high volume published AI spam. I think it's like they are on a warpath against AI spam. Not all AI is spam, but all spam in 2025 is definitely AI generated, and so that sort of line gets blurred and is challenging for them on sort of what they need to nuke and aggressively push away from the search results, and what sort of is tolerable. So I think
Yeah,
it's
and
a
it's
really
also
challenging situation they find themselves in, and I think that's why we see this, like, what Google does and what Google says is different, which it's always been.
It's also a huge ethical question with the AI overviews and now AI mode component that they're rolling out. Because where are they getting these answers from, John? They're just scraping websites and formulating their own responses with Google Gemini that other people wrote. Maybe it's AI learning from AI. The world will never know. But
Yeah.
Google has also publicly said in documentation that they don't technically penalize AI content. But I have a hard time believing that, in my opinion, especially if something's written with a Gemini model. There's no way you can convince me that Google didn't know that Gemini created that content. So, how should, I guess, content creators and copywriters balance that, knowing that Google doesn't officially penalize AI content? But then again, if you search and, like you just said, there's all these ranking pages and posts that were generated by AI. So clearly they don't penalize it, but they reward some of it. What is your take on all of this?
Yeah, so they went out. There was a March update last year where they manually de-indexed, and I call it kind of a psyops update, where they included both a lot of press in front of the update. This is going to reduce spam by 40% in their index, and they went and manually de-indexed a ton of sites.
Was it Forbes Advisor and US News and all those?
That came later, but this was in March of 2024, and when we identified about 75,000 websites that had been de-indexed. When we looked at those websites, the majority of the content on those websites was AI generated, and so I think it's extremely clear that AI is aggressively punishing mass AI generated sites. That data has been sort of like well documented. It's clear, and it's in their own guidelines that automated generated text deserves the lowest quality rating. So I think they've said that they've punished sites. Where it gets tricky is sort of cyborg content. When there's human in the loop, it adds value. Um, how do we think about that? And that's where I think a lot of marketers need to sort of understand between sort of the marketer and the writer what's acceptable for the amount of AI use on your site. I think using AI on your site increases risk. At times, it makes sense. There are times where we use it on our site with when it's a English as a second language AI researcher, where like this clearly information gain happening, and AI is a useful tool for helping you make the words around the concepts that you're sharing easier to understand.
Let's stay on the same topic of SEO for a second here. So, for any SEOs or content writers who are listening to this, what should they do in terms of balancing AI with human input? How do you stay ahead with this whole thing? Is it a matter of just EEAT, getting credible and relevant backlinks? What are some tips that you have to, I guess, win in a zero click world moving forward?
Yeah, so I think thinking beyond words. If we're marketing, and this is the sort of the mantra that I have within our own content marketing team that's been working well. We're sort of 1.5 million organic visitors a month to our site, and our sort of mantra is thinking beyond words. So how do we add value beyond just the words? If we're in a world where the creation of words, intelligent words, is costs near zero, then how are your words just that much better? And so if you can add information gain in other forms, whether that be a free tool, whether it be original data, whether that be sort of images that help communicate the concept, video. So thinking beyond, adding value to the user for that search term beyond words is the sort of the mantra that we're executing internally, and I'm always happy to talk about.
What are some of the mistakes that you see people make when trying to leverage AI into their SEO or content efforts?
The most common is just thinking that like, oh, with this, but like basic AI is bad, but with this really clever prompt, it becomes good. And so I think that's the most common problem that I see people having. And I get it. It's such a compelling trap to fall into, where you can, click a button and publish all your marketing materials that you need to at, pennies. And it's incredibly compelling, but unfortunately, I've not seen it work out consistently for any length of time.
There's a lot of like silver bullet syndrome, I call it, in the words of AI content or AI writing, where you have a million different AI SaaS tools, Jasper being the most notable. They were the first player, where they just claim that you can write a million blogs overnight and rank one on Google and da da da. But behind the scenes, it's white labeled GPT 4.0 mini because they're upselling the API costs to the consumer. So they're using the worst model possible, which won't move the needle. Of course, they're not going to sell that. But the average person who's new to AI, they get fooled into all this gimmicky marketing from SaaS tools. At least that's what I see.
I think you're 100% correct. I think that's been the way it's been since those tools came out. Like I don't think I've seen a lot of case studies on like started case studies on like mass producing AI content, but it's been around now for long enough that if somebody truly could produce mass produced AI content that ranked in Google, we would see case studies about that, and that's just not what we've seen.
So I want to talk about Originality.ai for a minute here. Do you have any potential client stories or case studies about someone who transformed their content strategy maybe after using Originality AI?
So we've got a couple like more on the painful side, but then we'll have some on the positive too, where we've had people come to us after a Google update where their site had been de-indexed, and they came to us and said like, "Hey,
Fix it.
writer our writers are saying they're not using AI," and we run it through the tool, and it's like the tool's not perfect, but it's highly accurate, not perfect, and there's almost no chance that we're getting the scores that we're getting across all the content that's been published on your site showing it's been AI and having it not been AI. And like your writers are lying to you, and you mass published AI content, and your site has now been de-indexed, and you've lost your business. So we've had, unfortunately, more than like we've we've had multiple instances of that where there was not a sort of AI policy in place with controls, and a marketer thinking they were either doing a good job or making their life easier, pushed out a high volume content. Um, we've had a lot of, so on the kind of the positive side, we've had a lot of agencies find a lot of success because they were constantly being challenged um, by their clients saying, "How do I know you're not using AI?" And then implementing AI detection and plagiarism checking, and then sort of the ability to share that um, the findings of originality between the writer, the editor, the agency, and the client, and make sure that sort of have those marketing agencies be able to defend their price point in a world where there's other agencies saying I can get content for $10 an article.
Yeah.
Why do I pay you 100, 500 for it? And how can you show me that this is truly human versus just I hear your words, but how do I believe you?
Well, that's what I was going to ask is how much weight do you put on those content detection scores, right? So, I mean, just because something comes back as 60, 70%, how do you know, right? I mean, how much weight can you put on like 100%? Sure, that's another story, or 0%, but those 50, 60, 70%, how do you know and how to move forward from that?
Yeah, so the score gives it's either it's basically saying I think this is AI or I think this is human, and it gives you the confidence that it is one of
And
those
I've
things.
never used yours. I've used like Quillbot, I've used writer.com and GPT zero, right? I'm just thinking some of the ones I've used. And those are just some of the general percentage scores that I'm seeing.
Yeah, yeah, and so um, we've run a bunch of third party tests that has us being the most accurate. And we've run our own tests that has us being the most accurate as well, because we're focused heavily on the world of web content, whereas a lot of those other detectors are focused on sort of academia
Mm.
and historical texts and books, where we're like, 500 word, 1,000 word published on the web articles is like what our model is specialized to be extra good at. Um, Most models still fall within this range. We're 99% accurate on calling AI, and then depending on the model, we have a light model and a turbo model. We Light model has a lower false positive rate of sort of 1%, but it allows for light AI editing. The turbo model is like hard no AI, but it has a higher false positive rate. So about 3% of the time, it will call human written text AI generated, and so they're highly accurate but not perfect, and that means they need to be used in use cases that sort of reflect that high accuracy but imperfection. And so where it gets, to sort of answer the question, where it gets used the best is uh, when you have sort of a confusion around like, hey, 60%, this one was 40%, what do I do? It's sort of the starting point for a conversation with the writer. Whereas if it's sailing through like, yeah, 100% original, I'm happy. So, ooh, 60% AI, but 60% confident. What do I do? And then we have a free Chrome extension that if anyone has written the text in a Google document, it will take all the metadata that exists within that Google
Mm.
document and then recreate it into a writing replay. And so it's like, okay, I got a score that has raised a question mark. I now can go into the document with this Chrome extension and basically watch the writer write. And if it's sort of a natural profile of number of characters over time, then that can really sort of help people understand that, okay, this truly was uh, human generated, or yeah, this got pasted in here within 10 seconds and then a couple edits and formatting changes, and that was it. Unlikely they wrote 1,000 words in 2 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm also been part of the camp, John, where I think it should be a combination of both. I've been as in SEO since 2018, and I'll admit part of my strategy is a lot of AI for ideation, for outlines, for titles, meta descriptions. You can actually automate internal linking through XML sitemaps and robots TXT files. So those are some of the ways in analysis, right? Copying and pasting an article, asking it to analyze that from an SEO perspective. These are some of the ways that I'm using AI for SEO. Do you agree with that, or do you just think that there should be no AI? Yes, AI. Talk about your philosophy there.
Yeah, I mean, I love. We're definitely not anti AI. I think it's a very slippery slope, and so we have it's a very very slippery slope for writers to sort of to use AI for ideation, and then it's just like a lot can slip in there. And so I think that's the challenge. I think it's phenomenal for sort of like pulling out insights out of data that can then be so like where do I think it's safe? And I think it's a spectrum, right? It's like, um, where's that line? I don't know. For us, I think using it for sort of data analysis to pull out insights to then write about, I think is awesome. Um, Reviewing posts to say, what's possibly missed. I mean, that was such a useful aspect of it that we built a tool specifically around sort of the content optimization abilities that LLMs have over traditional like dumb keyword optimization tools. And so I think there's uh, a lot of use cases. I think it can be really dangerous for where it's allowed to be used and not allowed to be used to be left up to the person that isn't the sort of ultimate risk owner. So if you're the website, if you're writing for your own website, you know how it's being used. You're good to use it however you like, of course. If
That's
you're
a good
hiring a
point.
writer, and you leave it up to them, you're putting a lot of risk. You're putting a lot of your own risk for them to decide, and that's they're not the ones that ultimately own the risk of AI content being published on their website if they're a hired writer.
That's a really good distinction. I actually had a post yesterday that went viral on LinkedIn. I wasn't even expecting it to. It was just a little quick tip about how to remove the M dashes or the long dash from Chat GPT. And
Yeah,
so many people are reacted emotionally to that. And it was a lot of these content writers and this and that. And my philosophy, honestly, Jon, has been look at these models now. You got Claude 3.7 Sonnet, you got GPT 4.0, even Gemini is probably decent at copywriting too. But in my humble opinion, I actually think that these models are better than mediocre and below average content writers. Not to mention, if you're outsourcing this on a Fiverr or an Upwork type platform for copywriting, those people are probably using AI tools to even create the content in the first place. So I think we're seeing such a drastic shift right now in terms of the copywriting, content writing world, where I think there has to be either you're very, very good at what you do or you're going to be left in the dust.
yeah, it's better than I am, like by a wide
Same
margin.
here.
It's like, oh, that's exactly what I was trying to communicate. So I use it all the time for emails, internal communication, um, and sort of trying to think about how to rephrase things. But again, I'm the one that sort of owns that risk if it's published on the site or on my LinkedIn profile. But yeah, it's like my own thoughts, and then like AI puts it into words that make way more sense than I'd rather think in spreadsheets than written word. And it's
I,
it's a way better writer than I am.
I mean, I have an AI video clone. So think about the risk that comes with a video clone and posting that all over my platforms and someone
Yep.
maybe taking that and reusing it for deep fakes, right? So I'm taking a lot of risk in that regard.
Yep. Yeah, but it's your risk to
It
accept,
is.
and you get the benefit from it. So I think it's a well play. Like, we talk about it internally sometimes where we're trying to place the risk acceptance on the ultimate risk owner, of sort of how much AI gets used and where in someone's sort of content marketing business.
Yeah, for sure. So another question here I have for you is what future developments do you foresee kind of in the AI content detection space? I guess in the next, it's changing so quick, the goalposts are moving so fast, but in the next, 1 to 2 years, maybe 3 years, where do you see AI content detection going?
Yeah, I think the sort of similar answer to earlier around nuanceness about where it's accepted and not accepted. Um, I've seen a lot lower emotion around it than like I think there was a wild level of emotion around it when it first came out. Like when I mean it came out and then ChatGPT came out and then writers realized that their sort of livelihood was at risk due to this tool. And then there was sort of this misplaced anger on detection because detection was sort of the final step to say like, hey, maybe your content was AI generated. Um, and so I think we've seen this sort of acceptance and adoption by human writers that want their content to be compensated for the work that they put in, and so that's been sort of I think that trend will continue. Um, I think the nuanceness trend will continue where people will say that here's where I want it, here's where I don't want it, and policies put in place for that. I think it will continue to be highly accurate, but not perfect. Not what I would have said sort of 5 years ago. And I think it will get worked in um, I'd say selfish answer, but I think like for originality, a lot of use comes from just like AI check or like AI will be used more completely from a content quality standpoint, and so evaluating, does this content AI generated or not, plagiarized or not, readability range accurate, does it have our brand voice, does it meet our editorial guidelines? I think there's a lot of use case within that editorial step that AI can support, and so I think AI detection, I think our tool in particular, will be a more complete content editor's AI assistant compared to just sort of like AI check, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. So let's move on to my favorite question of the show. This is the Marketing Quacks podcast, after all, Jon. So if you had to define a marketing quack in the AI content creation world, detection world, what would that be for you?
I mean, I think I mean, we've talked about the mass publishing of AI content. I think it's one of those things that's just, I'm like, how does this thing still living on, that people think that this works? And I think the reason why it's living on is because it's just so compelling. If you can click a button that publishes articles that aren't, $100, $1,000, whatever it might be, but it's like 5 cents, and they rank first in Google, that's a pretty incredible
Yeah,
thing.
but they rank first in Google for the longest tail keyword that you could ever think of that no one searches and doesn't drive anything.
Yeah, and if you publish too many of them, that quickly gets identified by Google and you get shut down. So I think that kind of, I think SEO, internet marketing SEO has had this challenge, for forever. But I would say that's the one that seems to be surprisingly stubborn. These things normally go through phases and get figured out. I haven't seen any data that supports that it does work, and I've seen lots and lots and lots of data that supports it doesn't work, and I'm just surprised that it has continued for as long as it has.
Shiny object syndrome, man. That's just human psychology. That's my biggest quack in the SEO space, are all these gurus on YouTube that say, use this AI tool or use this trick to rank one. And then they look at an example of what they're ranking one for. It's like two people search for that a month and it's not driving any leads or revenue. So ranking one for the sake of ranking one is such a gimmick, in my opinion. And a lot of people fall for that.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a good one.
So yeah, Jon, I mean, this has been fun. I guess any final notes here on just AI content detection, anything that we talked about that you just want to leave listeners with?
Yeah, I think you covered it well. I mean, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, then feel free to reach out, Jon at Originality.ai, Jon. And yeah, no, I think it's been a fun chat.
Awesome. Well, Jon, thank you so much for your time. I'll leave links to everything in the show notes below, give you some of those podcast SEO backlinks too to follow along there. So thanks everyone for listening to this episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. Be sure to tune in again next time.